Do you like to be challenged? I sure hope so, because you will never grow in life unless you are challenged. That's the whole point of like the human spirit. We want to be able to grow and conquer and continue on. Stick through this video. There's some profound effects as far as what's happening in our modern times and the way challenges are not happening today. I mean, obviously there are challenges. Maybe you are being challenged with something. I know, like, for example, for me in martial arts, I try to perfect a certain type of kick. And I'll even tell myself, here's that self-doubt talk. You know what? I'll never get this kick. And give it another week or two, whatever the time frame is, and I'll get it. And I'll say, why did I doubt myself? But either way, the key is I stuck with it and I practiced and I mastered it. And that's great. But I find as time goes on, more and more people are not accepting challenges and they're not stepping up to try to do that. And this is a huge problem, not necessarily a problem with a specific person, although that may happen, but a problem with society as well. The United States, and of course other countries too, were founded on, that drive and determination and that spirit, and we can conquer and we can, grow and we can become something that's much bigger than just you and I. Unfortunately, however, when this happens, as far as like the challenges, it's often combed with adversity. Adversity is one of the biggest things we see today, where people don't want to step up with it. Instead, they kind of like plug their ears and say la 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 and go off and sit down and just watch television and eat their fast food and don't worry about anything in life at all beyond that. But the adversity has to take place. It's not just like a martial arts challenge or a challenge at work, but adversity is a challenge too. And it's something that we must endure if we want to grow, not necessarily as a person, but as a society. We must have that. We have to have adversity, and adversity in all situations, mind you. But we're finding we're in a time more than more, because of adversity and people not standing up to adversity and trying to figure things out together, we're seeing more and more division happening right now. And I find that whenever there's an opposing view, and I mean every time there's an opposing view, I love to give it a fair shake. I mean, I'll be honest with you, I don't love to give it a fair shake. I'll read through it and say, I don't agree with this, but I kind of like grit my teeth and read through it anyway, because it is opposition, because it is a challenge and it makes me grow. I literally may find something in there. I'll say, you know what? I don't agree with your point of view, but at least now I can empathize and understand why you have that point of view. Still don't agree with it, but at least that's what we do as far as mankind and humans, is we try to, bridge that gap. That's how we used to do everything, by the way. It's changed now, hasn't it? Okay, and I need to pause this video and our topic for just a moment. I want to address this situation. Even as a YouTube channel creator, I encounter this all the time. When it comes to starting a video, I like to give you a little bit of introduction as far as what's happening into this. And if I even go just a matter of 10 or 15 seconds, I will get comments from people saying, oh my gosh, can you get to the point already? They can't even make it 15 seconds without having to gripe that they had to wait too long to get this information. That boggles my mind, and I'm sure it does you as well. And take a look at this article. Employers reveal why Gen Z is the hardest generation to work with. Not the hardest generation to work, but to work with. Despite many of them have only just entered the workforce, Gen Zers, born after 97 onwards, is already getting a bad rap at the office. According to a recent survey of 1,300 managers, 3 out of 4 agree that Gen Z is harder to work with than any other generation. So much so that 65% of employers said they have to fire them more often. And 1 in 8 have to let go Gen Z less than 1 week after their start date. For Alexis McDonald, a content creator who managed Gen Z employees at a tech company, she said the biggest difference I noticed was just a difference in professionalism. I think the pandemic had a big role to play in this, because for all of them, this is their first job out of college and their last years were spent remote. And that's an interesting point, because I've read studies where it talked about the social skills that were lost by so many kids because of this situation. I have a friend who told me in elementary school, some of the kids actually became violent because when they came back to school, they didn't know how to handle themselves. They all exhibit some weird office behavior. They didn't know how to conduct themselves in a business setting. And another major complaint was distractibility. 36% of managers agree that Gen Z has a hard time just concentrating. They would be on team calls and you'd have to be able to tell them, they're on their phones, get off your phone. And if we call on them, it's like a deer in the headlights, and you could tell that they hadn't been paying attention at all. And when I went and saw Oppenheimer, I had one of these fellows sitting right in front of me. Instead of sitting like an adult, he sat back and put his legs up on the seat in front of him. And 3 times during the first couple hours of the movie, before the actual explosion took place, he got on his phone 3 times. And it's one of the things, even though it says, be courteous for other people, they don't care. And he would continuously get on his phone. Again, 3 times it was quick, maybe just checking his time. But once the explosion happened, then it started talking about all the politics. He completely lost interest and pulled out his phone, decided, I'm going to go ahead and surf. He was shopping, looking at Instagram reels, reading people's t-shirts. I finally had to reach up to him, whisper, and said, get off your beep, beep phone. And he didn't like that very much at all. And that's the thing, is they don't like the adversity. They don't like the challenges. But I think practically speaking, anybody else would say, oh my gosh, I didn't realize you were right behind me. And obviously this is something that's bugging you. But no, he didn't want that at all. Instead, he goes, shh, and tried to shush me. And that's when I became very colorful in my language. I said, get off your phone before I stuff it up your fill in the blank. And he did for the rest of the film. I'm sure he sat there very upset because of this. They said anytime you get a customer who would come in even remotely close to the closing time, they would do anything to get that person out of the door quicker. They said, you're in customer service and have zero interest in helping the customer. And I was at some store the other day. I'm very cheery. I'm a nice, sociable person. And the person comes out, hey, how may I help you? And I said, hey, how are you today? She literally just stared at me like, I already asked you what you want. Why don't you? And I couldn't believe it. We're finding that customer service, it used to be the business setting was the customer's always right. And I understand if you have some griping customer who obviously doesn't respect you, that's one thing. But when you have a customer coming in, they're being pleasant with you, trying to work with you, trying to brighten your day, trying to do, oh my gosh, have a conversation with you, you would think they would have enough common sense to actually have a conversation back. Especially in this situation when we're finding the Gen Zers don't really want to work, you think social skills would be at the top of their list, but it's actually far from true also. They really have no social skills and unfortunately will completely shun you. I guess it's going back to their phones. They want to scroll on their phone because that's what they communicate with more than anything else. And this part blows my mind. They just have different expectations when they start a job. They want to determine when and how they do their work. That's the biggest difference. Whereas even millennials and prior generations understood that when you come to work, you do what the employer asks of you. More so, you have to be careful because, they're a little bit more fragile and sensitive, and you have to deal with their attitude if they don't take feedback well. They dominate our culture with social justice fundamentalism. And they said, I'm a normal human being and certainly not an angry racist or homophobe or anything like that, but I don't know where the line is. It feels like the younger generation, the line keeps getting redrawn every day. But I will admit, practically speaking, whenever a new generation does pop up, the older generations complain about that new generation. Same thing happened when I was a kid as well. How does this help you and me? Where's this going? Back to what I mentioned at the beginning, has Gen Z lost critical thinking skills? They enter the professional workplace and are educated. They're book smart, eager, and capable, but it seems like they entirely lack a certain skill set called critical thinking. And the other day I was driving down for some martial arts training with a second-degree black belt friend of mine, and she's a high school teacher. And she said that she really tries to push critical thinking in the classroom, which, I absolutely applaud her. But all these things we're talking about, she said, but nevertheless, all this comes up in her face, and she has to deal with this all the time. And the only thing she says is this, you know what? Retirement's coming. And if I didn't have to worry about retirement, I would be out of there because it's becoming unmanageable in the high school and I'm sure other levels too. And it says, therein lies the problem. In the workplace, Gen Z may for the first time experience situations where they have competing priorities, conflicting directions from different departments, and a significant amount of information hitting them like a fire hose. And because of this, they freeze like a deer in the headlights. And therein lies the moral of this story. It's not simply just critical thinking or socializing and talking with people. It's all of this into one encompassing attribute that we're finding more and more often now. And as preppers, we have to be extremely careful about this. And here's why. Here's where I'm leading to this. Go ahead and actually attribute anybody you want to when I say like the elites. It could be our current administration or people pulling strings. It doesn't have to be this current one, but all the administrations. Or possibly when we're talking about the World Economic Forum, United Nations, the list goes on and on. They have a goal, and that goal goes directly in the face of you and I. That's why you're on this channel. And how are they going to make their goal work? One part of it is obviously through education, trying to push it through education, but they've been very clever about this. These Gen Zers did not come out of nowhere. They were programmed this way. Think of your brain as simply a way to something that can be programmable like a computer. And they have found out very well that you can program certain attributes. Because guess what? We have now hit a place in which the current generation that's coming up as far as work goes doesn't want to work. And when they're there, they want to play on their phone. And when they're not there either also. Even socially aren't intermingling with people, and there's no adversity, no challenges, nothing going where they can actually try to grow. So what do we call these people? It's simple. We call them robots. And I know a lot of different channels call them like sheeples and things like that, or the sheep, etc. But I want to call them robots because this specific problem, even though it's not new to Gen Zers, we're seeing this far more in the Gen Z society. It's going completely in the face of what we hold to be true and what we actually call to be pride. I look at challenges in work being something I can be proud about, and they want no part of this. So why? Why would the elites be pushing this? It's really simple. It's called socialism. This is, in my opinion, the last step before socialism, because the Gen Zers want one thing and one thing only, and that's to be left alone, to go into their minds, go on their phones, and never actually have to do anything. Introduce AI, introduce robotics, introduce all these other attributes would make it so they can't work, and they're happy as a clam. Even the AI, again, we're looking at by 2030, over half the regular jobs are going to be gone by then. What's it going to be like for the next 10 years after that? Because as AI is advancing like crazy, exponentially, mind you, it's making it more and more easy for their jobs that they don't want to do anyway to be replaced by computers. So now the corporations, now the elites, now the UN, now all these people we want to tag on this have it their way. Because now they can still have these same people coming through, these same Gen Zers coming through the drive-thru to get their fast food on the way home to watch their next TV show, and they still get the money. But the Gen Zers, well, where's the money come from? If you haven't researched it, check it out. They're doing what they can right now to try to establish a base social income for everyone, since there's going to be so much mass unemployment. But the hard part about this, and we talk about challenges, and this is the scary part. You and I, the way we look at things, we want to be challenged. We don't want to be put in a box. We don't want to live a life where we simply just eat fast food every day, then come home and watch our favorite TV shows or YouTube channels, or sit around and do nothing. We want challenges. I'm not saying we don't need a break now and then, but we like challenges because you and I, we like to grow. But we are being phased out, my friend. And as time is coming, and it's very clear that their ultimate goal is making it so there's no challenges, just rest and relax, eat fast food, and depend on the government for everything instead of actually any type of challenges. Because the last thing the government want, or these elites want, is a challenge. And I'm not talking about the Gen Zers, the government. They don't want people challenging them. We're already seeing this now on numerous platforms, social media platforms, in which you challenge the government. Oh my gosh, I can't believe you're challenging them. This is all falling right in line with what they're doing for this predictive programming into the Gen Zers. A time is coming, very, very soon, mind you, where our way of thinking, which is thinking and critical thinking, is on its way out, and the Gen Zers who simply just follow along like some type of zombie trance are going to do whatever the government tells them. You sit back in your home, go to your 15-minute city stay, at least you're getting some exercises, walk into the grocery store. You may not get certain choices, but you know what? Having not as many choices is better than being challenged. No better time than right now to prep. Be prepared, because unfortunately, as these chess pieces are being put into place, we're going to be seeing a checkmate very soon. And the only way we can get past this is through our ingenuity, through being challenged, and being self-sufficient as preppers.